Some jobs find you at the right time. That's how I think about the Sandridge now, even after everything. I needed quiet. I needed somewhere nobody would ask me questions or expect much from me or need me to be anything in particular. The night audit shift at a roadside motel in rural Nevada was about as close to invisible as an employed person can get. 11 at night to 7 in the morning, a parking lot full of cracks, a vending machine that hummed, 3 or 4 guests on a busy week. I was 34 years old and I had recently come through a bad stretch, and I wanted a job where I could sit in a small room and be left alone with my thoughts until the sun came up. The Sandridge gave me that for about 3 weeks before it gave me something else entirely. The motel was 12 rooms in a single strip off a Nevada highway that doesn't appear on most people's routes unless they're going somewhere specific or trying to avoid somewhere else. The kind of highway that exists in between things. Long, flat stretches of dark, and then a gas station, and then more dark. The Sandridge sat just off an exit with a sign that had lost 2 of its letters, and nobody had replaced them. There was a small office at one end of the strip with a window that looked out at the parking lot and the room doors and the narrow strip of road beyond the lot's edge. The manager was a woman named Deb, somewhere in her 50s, tired in a permanent way, not a temporary way. She trained me in just under an hour on my first day. The check-in system, which was old software on an older computer. The key box on the wall behind the desk, 12 hooks, 12 keys. The log binder, which held the records going back years, handwritten entries supplemented by whatever the computer printed out. How to handle a walk-in, which was rare. What to do if someone caused trouble, which was rarer. She showed me the incident protocol folder in the bottom drawer and said she hoped I'd never need it. Then she handed me my name tag and said she'd be in at 7 and left me alone. The first 3 weeks were exactly what I wanted. Truckers passing through. A couple who didn't talk to each other. A man with a medium-sized dog he thought I hadn't noticed. The occasional solo traveler who needed 6 hours of horizontal time and a shower before they got back on the road. I checked them in and I checked them out, and in between I sat at the desk with the window in front of me and the night outside, and I was quiet and nothing asked anything of me. Then I started going through the old logbooks. Boredom, mostly. Or maybe the particular restlessness of 3 in the morning when the lot is empty and the vending machine is the only sound and your mind needs something to do with itself. The binder held logs going back 7 years. Handwritten columns. Date, room number, name, check-in time, checkout time. Hundreds of pages of ordinary roadside motel data. I read them the way some people read old newspapers, looking for nothing, just reading. I found it in my 3rd week on the job, on a slow Tuesday night, somewhere around 2 in the morning. I was going through the 2022 logs when I noticed it the first time. Room 9, a Friday in January. Name, R. Caulfield. Check-in time listed between 10 and 11 p.m. Check-out, early departure, before 5 a.m. I turned the page. Next Friday, Room 9, R. Caulfield. Early departure. I kept going. Every Friday in 2022, same name, same room, same early departure notation, week after week without exception. 52 Fridays, 52 entries. I told myself what you'd tell yourself. Regular traveler, sales route, somebody who drove the same stretch of Nevada every week and had found his spot and stuck with it. It happens. People are creatures of habit. I am a creature of habit. I understood it and I turned back to the current week's paperwork and forgot about it. Then the following night, I pulled the 2021 log. Same thing. Every Friday, R. Caulfield, room 9. I sat with that for a while. Then I pulled 2020. Same. Then 2019. I stopped at 2018. The entries started in March. Every Friday, the same as the other years, right through spring and into summer. Then they stopped. 6 weeks with no entry for room 9 on any Friday. August was empty. Then in October they started again. Same name, same room, same early departure. I looked at the August gap more carefully. There was something paper-clipped into the binder at that section. A single sheet, different paper, official-looking. An incident report form. The date at the top was August 14th, 2018. Room 9. Guest found unresponsive by cleaning staff on Saturday morning. Emergency services contacted. Responding paramedics pronounced the guest dead at the scene. Cause listed as apparent cardiac event pending official determination. Name of guest, Raymond Caulfield. I read it twice. Then I looked at the October entries. The first Friday after the 6-week gap. Room 9, R. Caulfield. Check-in at 10:47 p.m. Early departure. I sat at that desk for a long time looking at the binder open in front of me. Outside the window, the parking lot was empty, and the highway beyond it was dark, and the vending machine hummed its steady hum. Raymond Caulfield had died in room 9 on a Friday night in August of 2018. His name had appeared in the log every Friday since October of that same year. I waited until Deb came in at 7 and I showed her. I set the binder on the desk with the incident report and the surrounding log entries, and I walked her through what I'd found. She looked at it. She was quiet for longer than felt comfortable. Then she said she hadn't noticed. She said the nights ran themselves mostly, and she didn't review the logs the way she used to. She said the computer system sometimes auto-generated entries from old reservation data. A known glitch. She'd look into it. She didn't look at me while she said any of it. She looked at the binder, or she looked at the window, or she looked at the key box. Not at me. I went home and slept until 3 in the afternoon, and when I woke up, I lay in bed thinking about her face, and the way her voice had gone careful and flat, and I decided I was going to pay closer attention on Friday nights. The first Friday I watched, nobody checked in for room 9. I had the key on its hook in the box, and the lot outside had 3 other guests spread across the strip, and room 9's door was dark and closed, and nothing. At 2 in the morning I looked up from the desk, and the light was on in room 9, a thin yellow line under the door. The gap between the bottom of the door and the threshold was maybe half an inch, and the light came through it clearly, steady and warm, the way a lamp looks when it's been on for a while. I sat forward in my chair, looked at the key box. The room 9 key was on its hook. I walked across the parking lot. The night was cold and very still. I knocked on the door of room 9. Nothing. I knocked again. Nothing. I went back for the master key and I opened the door. The room was empty and the light was off. Bed flat. Pillows undisturbed. The small lamp on the nightstand was off and cold to the touch when I pressed my hand against the bulb. I stood in the middle of that dark room and I was certain, completely certain, that I had seen light under that door. I turned the lamp on and off twice. The light showed under the door. It was real and working. I turned it off and stood in the dark again for a moment, and then I went back to the office. The second Friday I didn't go over right away. I let it develop. I made a cup of bad coffee from the machine in the back, and I pulled my chair close to the window, and I sat there and I watched room 9. The light came on at 1:30 in the morning. Same thin yellow line. I sat with my coffee and I watched it. 1:30 became 2. 2 became 3. I watched that line of light and I didn't move. At 3:17 in the morning, it went off. I counted to 60. Then I walked over with the master key. The room was dark, but the bed was different. The pillow on the right side had a dent in it, a slow compression like foam that has been under the weight of a head and is working its way back. The blanket was pulled away at the corner, just slightly, the way it pulls when someone lies on top of it and then gets up. Not slept in, rested on. The way a person lies down when they're tired from a long drive and they just want to be horizontal for a few hours before the road again. I went back to the desk. The computer screen had an entry on it I had not made. Check-in. Room 9. 10:52 p.m. R. Caulfield. I sat in front of that screen for a long time. I had been at the desk at 10:52. I had not entered anything. The office had been empty except for me. I watched the cursor blink next to Raymond Caulfield's name, and I did not touch the keyboard. The following Thursday afternoon, before my shift, I called the county records office and asked about death records. It took 2 transfers and about 20 minutes, but I got a person who could confirm it. Raymond Caulfield. Death certificate issued August 2018. Cause of death, cardiac event. Next of kin listed as a sister. Body claimed and released. Burial registered at a cemetery outside Reno. I thanked the woman and I hung up, and I sat in my car outside my apartment for a while before I went inside. That Friday, I set my phone to record and put it in my breast pocket before I left for the shift. I got to the Sandridge at 10:45, sat down. The lot was quiet. 2 guests in rooms at the far end of the strip. Room 9 dark and still. At 11:04, the computer did it again. I was watching the screen when it happened. The cursor moved without me. The keys didn't press, nothing visible, but the text appeared the way text appears when someone types it. Room number first, then the name. R. Caulfield. Check-in time auto-filled as 11:04. I watched every character appear, and I did not touch the desk. I turned my chair to face the window. Room 9 across the lot. Dark door. Empty parking space in front of it. The highway beyond the lot moving dark and fast in both directions. Occasional headlights sweeping past and gone. At 1:13 in the morning, the light came on. I made myself wait. I sat there and I made myself breathe evenly, and I did not move for a while. Then I got up. I crossed the lot in the cold. My phone was recording in my pocket. I stood in front of the door of room 9 and I looked at the line of light underneath it, and I stood there for what was probably 3 full minutes. Then I raised my hand and I knocked. 3 times. From inside the room, something knocked back. 3 times. Slow. Even. The same weight and spacing as my knocks, mirrored back at me through the door. Not frantic. Not frightened. Just answering. The way you knock back when you've heard someone at the door and you want them to know you're there. I lowered my hand. I took 1 step back. I stood in the cold Nevada night outside the door of room 9, and I listened to my own breathing for a moment. Then I walked back across the lot, and I sat down at the desk and I watched the clock. At 4:51, the light under the door went out. I sat with that for a few minutes. Then I opened the log on the computer and I found the entry for room 9, and I manually entered a checkout. Early departure. I typed it in myself. Raymond Caulfield, room 9, early departure, 4:51 a.m. I don't know exactly why I did it. It felt like the correct thing to do. It felt like completing something that had its own shape and needed finishing properly. At 5 in the morning, I walked over with the master key and I opened room 9. Bed disturbed, pillow dented on the right side, blanket pulled back at the corner, same as the week before. On the nightstand, next to the lamp, was a Sandridge Motel notepad. The small, square kind with the logo at the top. One line written on it in ballpoint ink. Same as always. I stood over it and I looked at it without touching it. The ink was strange. Not fresh. It had the faded look of ink that has been sitting on paper for a long time, oxidized and slightly brown at the edges. The handwriting was plain and unhurried. Someone who had written those words with no particular feeling about them. A man noting something routine. Same as always. I handed in my name tag and my key the following Monday morning. Deb took them without a lot of questions. Her face had that careful, flat quality it had gotten since I'd shown her the logbooks. She didn't seem surprised that I was leaving. She didn't try to change my mind. Before I left, I photographed the notepad from 4 angles with my phone. Then I left it where it was. I filed a report with the county sheriff's office. 2 deputies came out within the week to look at the room. They were professional and thorough and found nothing that constituted evidence of a crime. Raymond Caulfield was legally dead. No living person was listed as missing. The notepad had been handled by multiple people at that point and produced nothing useful. The case was noted and closed. I spent 2 weeks going through obituary databases and public records looking for Raymond Caulfield's sister. I found her through a cross-reference in a local Nevada paper's obituary section, a listing from several years back for their mother in which the surviving children were named. Her number was in the public directory. She picked up on the 3rd ring. I told her who I was and where I had worked, and I was careful about how I explained it. I said I had come across her brother's name in some old records at the Sandridge Motel, and I wanted to ask her about him. She was quiet when I said the motel's name. Not shocked, just quiet in a recognizing way. She told me Raymond had driven through that stretch of Nevada every Friday for work for 20 years. Sales territory. A long route through the western states. The Sandridge had been his regular stop. Always room 9 because it was at the end away from the highway noise, and he liked the quiet. He liked the consistency. Checked in late, got a few hours, checked out early, and got back on the road. He did it every week for 2 decades. He died there on a Friday night in August. His heart gave out while he was sleeping. He was found in the morning by the cleaning staff. The sister paused for a moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Then she said, "I always hoped he found somewhere comfortable after. Raymond didn't like change. Never did, his whole life. When he found something that suited him, he stayed with it." I thanked her and said I was sorry for her loss, which felt inadequate for something that old, and we hung up. I live in a different state now. Different kind of work. I don't do night shifts anymore. I don't spend hours alone in small rooms watching parking lots in the dark. But I still have the photograph of that notepad. It's in my phone's camera roll, and I've looked at it more times than I can count. The Sandridge logo at the top. That one line in the center of the page. The ink brownish and faded. The handwriting unhurried and plain. Same as always. I showed it to Deb before I left and asked her about the notepad design. She looked at it and said they had stopped ordering that particular design in 2017. Switched suppliers. The logo was slightly different on the current pads. The one in the photograph was the old design. I asked if there were old pads left in the rooms. She said they had replaced them all when they switched over. I have thought about that a great deal. A notepad from a design discontinued in 2017. Found in room 9 in the early hours of a Friday morning in the present day. Ink that looked old. Handwriting that matched nobody on staff, past or present, according to Deb, who had been there long enough to know them all. Whatever wrote that note has been writing it for a long time. And whatever drove that road every Friday for 20 years, whatever came off that highway and found the same room and laid down in the same bed and rested for a few hours before moving on, I don't think it noticed when the living part of the arrangement ended. I don't think Raymond Caulfield noticed, or if he did, I don't think it changed his plans. He had a route. He had a stop. He had a room that suited him. And he didn't like change. Same as always. That's what it says. Every Friday night for 6 years in an empty room with the light on and the blanket pulled back and the pillow dented on the right side. Same as always. I believe him.